Alrighty, ladies and gents, boys and girls, pretty much the whole fleet needs repairs, or work, or things done. The whole fleet, aside from the trucks. Luckily the trucks are good. But the SC, the LS Miata, and the Subaru all have problems, all need fixing. So that is what we're going to tackle today. All the problems with all my POS cars. So with the FC, if you didn't see the video or took this thing to the old Freedom Factory, you probably wouldn't have seen that we set it on fire twice. Let me make sure it's not on fire.
I think you might be on fire, bro.
It's all right. That's good, I think. Had about a fire per lap ratio. If you didn't see before that, we just put the 5.3 that was in the LS Miata for like 2 years in it. And for whatever reason, it is just puking oil out. It's everywhere. It's really hard to tell where it's coming from. It's getting on the header. It's catching on fire. You can see I cleaned this up and there's already oil here again. So got a couple ideas, couple things to check, couple ideas as to what could be leaking. And it's peeing all over the Miata. So I'm gonna clean the oil off the front of the Miata, get this thing out of here, and we're gonna dive into the FC first. See if we can't resolve our issue. Because I really want to drive this, like drive this car more than 4 laps with the new motor, but it's kind of hard to do that when it catches on fire every lap. So let's get to work. It's funny, I have hood shocks on the LS Miata, and the hood opens way further than this one does. There's definitely a lot of oil back here. All right, so this is actually a commenter's suggestion, oil pressure sensor. And as soon as I saw that comment, I was like, that 100% would make sense based on where the oil is coming from. Because it was such a weird spot. The trans was wet all around the trans, but really the back of the pan wasn't very wet where the rear main seal would be. But oil pressure sensor would make sense, and we've got a ton of oil back here. So I think that could be our culprit. So we're gonna take that out. We're gonna use some better thread tape. This is like the stuff for like gas line, like propane and stuff like that. So it's, I don't know, it's supposed to be better. So we'll try that and see if that doesn't solve our issue. All right, yeah, so the thread tape was pretty toast on that. And this crush washer is not in the best shape, so we're gonna replace both. New washer, new thread tape. All right, toss the intake back on after we clean up. Other area I want to tackle, these fittings. You can see this one's clearly leaking a little bit. This one looks dry, but this one's got a little bit of weepage. We're gonna pull these out, re-thread tape them with the gas line tape. Should be a little bit better, and go from there. Those fittings thread taped up, they definitely snugged up earlier than before, so I think we're making a better seal there. I also was able to make this line routing a little better than it was before, to where you can actually get to each of these. We got one more thing to do up top as far as our leak resolving battery of things, and then we'll worry about the rest. next thing on the list, valve cover gaskets. These are reused valve cover gaskets. So I got a new set to throw on, see if that helps. Pour those back on, just want to show you guys inside the head. It's kind of crazy. So I had these heads done 2 years ago when I put this motor in the LS Miata because the valves were pitted. So I had it, you know, hot tank, decked, whatever. And I'm really surprised how clean it still is. It still looks brand new. There's no staining anywhere. If I didn't need to redo the head, I never hot tanked my heads because I was like, there's no point. It's just gonna get dirty and stained again. But I mean, 2 years and they still look brand new. So it's definitely worth, to me at least, hot tanking them just purely to get them cleaned up before you start a build if it's a track car or something, because if you actually stay on top of your oil changes and drive it, it's probably gonna stay pretty clean. Anyway, go throw this valve cover back on. Well, that pretty much wraps up our regasketing. Pretty much everything I can think of without pulling the engine and redoing the PAM, which I don't even know if that's leaking. It's just, there's oil kind of everywhere, so it's really hard to tell where it's coming from. Definitely concentrated in the rear though, so I really do think very likely that it's that oil pressure sensor. I mean, we'll have to give it a try. The only annoying thing is the only time it leaked like that was drifting. So I drove it around, I beat on it, I did pulls on the street, you know, idled it, whatever. No leaks at all. It didn't start leaking, of course, until I started drifting it. So, you know, it's tough because I don't want to burn a drift day taking it to the track again and then, you know, it breaks and I can't drive it. But the only way to find out if it's good or not is to go drive it. So we'll have to figure that out. But for now, that is about concluded with what we're doing to this thing. We did burn some wires back here. The coolant temp sensor and almost the crank sensor. But it looks like the crank sensor wires are all right, I hope. I mean, it still starts up and runs fine, so we'll have to tackle that at another point. I have a whole nother nicer harness I can put in here for the stock ECU if I need to. But for now, we're gonna let it ride. We're gonna see if we've still got leaks and if the dang thing still sets on fire every single lap or not. So that's step one. We'll worry about the other stuff later. So I'm gonna go ahead and get this thing off the lift. We're gonna get the Miata in here, start diving into our little projects with that. We got this thing up in the air. I'm gonna go through real quick and just do a nut and bolt check, make sure all my suspension stuff's tight. It's really important to do this on a track car, drift car, or whatever it is, because just the vibrations and the abuse, like, things come loose. And I have neglected it in the past, and like my upper control arm, it's slotted for camber adjustment, and it got loose. And at clutch kickers, I'm driving around, my wheels changing camber by like 5 degrees. Didn't even know it. So anyway, I'm gonna go through and do that, but the first project for us after that is changing the oil, which is a bit of a process on this car because it's a dry sump. So let me finish this up and we'll get into it. Comment below if you think this thing needs a bath too. It's a smidge dirty. Just a smidge. So we've got some oil spillage back here. I don't know if you can see like where it's pooling down at the bottom. So we got to clean that up. I think our catch can is just full, but I'm not sure why our catch can is filling up. I never had this problem when I had the 5.3. When I had the 5.3, I would only have to clean the catch can out every time I changed the oil. Whereas throughout this oil's life, I've cleaned the catch can out once already and it seems to be full again. Granted, this oil has been in there longer than it should. I don't think I've changed it since I put the 6.2 in, but we've got some stuff I want to address on the engine side to try to remedy that as well. But first things first, we gotta get the oil itself changed. So, all right, first off, gotta undo our lines here. So for those of you who aren't familiar with dry sump systems, basically, this is our tank, this is where our oil is stored. Our pan is flat. We have an external pump that's sucking the oil out of the pan. It's a scavenge pump pumping it back to the tank, and then drawing it from the bottom of the tank back to the engine and pumping it through the engine. So this is our oil storage instead of being in the pan. Now the reason I went for a system like this is because LSs are pretty prone to oil starvation. You've got to do a lot to keep the oiling system up adequate, because basically the oil goes to the cam before it goes down to the crank and the rods. So if you have any bit of starvation, the rods are the last thing to get oil once the oil comes back online, and they're kind of under the most stress. So anyway, oiling systems are very important. I put a high priority on it. It's not the sexiest part where you're making more power. I mean, if you spent the $3 grand that a dry sump, this dry sump system costs on performance parts, you could get a really baller set of heads, you could get some crazy headers and an intake, but to me, reliability is the utmost important thing. I want my cars to work all the time. Last thing I want to do is have to work on my car at the track. Yeah, that's definitely got some Earl in it. That's all that E85 blow by. Stuff coming out of here always looks so nasty. Alright, tank's out. Alright, so what I gotta do now, I gotta pop the belt off the dry sump pump, which is right here. I wish doing this with a drill is a lot better, but you gotta do it with the electric ratchet. I'm just gonna spin the pump over and try to get more of the oil out of the system, so we're changing more of the oil, because there's a lot of line, there's, you know, what's left in the bottom of the pan, there's a good bit of oil still that we're not changing by just draining the tank. Pump gets real easy to spin once there's not much oil in it. You can see how much more oil is on our tub. We gained about an inch and a half of height, so probably about a quart that we got out. So now we move on to Le Filtro. Giving you guys a serious play-by-play on oil change. Just kind of interesting how different the method is with the dry sump. All right, well, the oil looks good. I don't see any metallicness. I'll go ahead and cut the filter open here in a minute just to verify we don't have anything caught in the pleats, any big metal chunks, but from here it's just reverse process. So I'm gonna slam this back together, fill it with oil, prime it the way we cleared it out, and we can move on to the next project. Oil right where it needs to be. Maybe add a tiny bit more. Now what I want to address is our excessive blow-by or filling of the catch can. So I think the problem is I have this valve covers breather capped off. I have a nice Motion Raceworks baffle breather here with a 10AN line, which is sufficient for this NA engine, just one 10AN line. But I think having this side capped off, I'm creating excessive crankcase pressure. So we're gonna try to connect this side to this side so the vapors can kind of equalize and both go out of there. All right, now our breathers are connected. Definitely should be an improvement. All right, the next item on the to-do list, steering wheels. These little things that wouldn't make a difference, but when you get really used to a car and really comfortable with the car, little tiny changes like this can make a difference. In steering wheel, shifter, handbrake, that stuff really changes. That's how you interact with the car. So to me, it really changes the feels. We're gonna try it. I'm experimenting. I've always ran my wheels super close to me. I thought that was what I liked, but in the FC, it's far away and I kind of like it. So I don't know. If you stick with one thing, you'll never find the best thing. That's the way I see it. So we might as well try it further away, drive it some like that, and see if we like it. So let's get this wheel swapped over. Oh, it's a bummer because I really like this Vertex wheel. It's like the nicest wheel I have. I like the wrap. It's like a real perforated leather. It has good grip with and without gloves. Like, it's a great wheel. It's just the 330 is too small. And I think how big the dish is makes the size feel exaggerated. Pretty solid 65 mil difference between the two of them. You can tell a little better. It's crazy. 20 mil is a big difference. This one, the top is 2 bolt, whereas most of my other wheels, the top is 1 bolt. So that it ends up crooked. I've got to take the whole hub off and recenter it. All right, before we go for a test rip to see how that wheel placement feels, I need to change my rear wheels, put some fresh tires on, because I need to swap the tires on these for the event coming up. Tough because I need to mount a new set of tires on these wheels so that I have as many tires as possible for the event, because we will likely go through a lot of tires, but those tires are still decent. I'd like to see how much longer they last. All right, we're gonna go take this thing for a drive real quick, make sure everything seems to be in good working order still, and really, mainly, I wanna see how that steering wheel feels that far away, how easy or hard it is to turn the wheels at low speed and stuff. I don't know, like I said, it gets to a point where you're just trying to dial in everything as much as you can. So why not experiment? So let's hit the road. I think I need to re-bleed the cooling system. It was getting warm. Water flow, it cools off. Alright, so far it feels a little too far away, but it could just be because I just came off of it being super close. One thing I've been considering doing with this car is turning it into more of a race car. Half cut the dash, no carpet, 2 front, 2 rear, just try to, not even close. Yeah, just make it more of a race car because I plan to build a street drift car. This thing's kind of a cross, but I really only ever use it for comps. Just get what you put in work. I don't know, it's going to be hard to tell until I'm drifting it. This test drive because I just remembered another very important thing we need to do to this car besides wash it, which is what I was going to do next. I guess we'll go ahead and wash it and then we'll do the important thing. This car does drive pretty decent as a street car. First, I'm going to recenter the wheel, then we're going to wash it, and then we'll do the important thing. Oh, Sandy. And I always forget how well this thing cleans up. It's one of those things, because of the paint color, the gold flake and stuff, you can't really tell how dirty it is until you wash it. And you're like, wait a second, this thing's actually shiny, not dull and gray from all the dirt. So yeah, washing's been on the to-do list for a bit now, but I always forget about it until I'm going to an event. I'm like, well, it's gonna get dirty tomorrow anyway, I might as well leave it. So I'm glad we got that done. Got to wash. Now we can move on to the real stuff. Like I said, one important thing I pretty much forgot about. Another important thing that I want to go ahead and get done that should hopefully solve some of our problems with the car. So we'll get it back in the shop, get back to work. Alrighty, so the next task at hand is addressing our cooling system. So the dilemma is our radiator is pushed as far forward as possible. To do that, it has to go under the core support here to give us room between the fan and the crank pulley, which as you can see, we don't have much because we got some big fans, big shroud to keep everything cool. So yeah, being that it's that far forward and under the support, it puts it much lower than the highest point of the cooling system. You can see this is where you'd be filling it from, and the highest point of the cooling system's, you know, up there. So the problem with that is you can't bleed all the air out because you're not filling from the highest point. The air isn't able to escape. So to counter that, I built an expansion tank, which went right here. But at the old Freedom Factory, I pushed it a little too hard and blew the seam off the expansion tank here. I just built up too much pressure in the cooling system because this is a pressurized part of the cooling system. There's two hoses that come off of the water pump, and water basically cycles through here, and this is part of it, and then that way you're able to fill, I guess I'll put it in there and show you, from the highest point of the cooling system, because this now becomes the highest point of the cooling system. So I was gonna rebuild it, I was gonna change the setup up and do AN fittings and do all this stuff, but I might eventually switch to an electric water pump. I'm kind of on the fence with the whole cooling system. So I figured for now, Sandy, I'm telling him. I'm telling him, Sands. Yeah, I'm telling him. So for now, figure we'll fix this one, toss it back in and see if that helps. Because clearly we weren't bled all the way based on how the temps were rising at idle. The reason they would do that is because we would have an air pocket, and at idle there's not a lot of coolant flow, so the sensor is reading that air pocket, thus reading steam, which is gonna read way higher than water. Fix that, toss it back in, see if that helps any. That's what I'm doing, Sands. I know it was your idea, I get it, I'll tell him. Yeah, all right. First thing we need to do is kind of grout this out, give us kind of a V to weld into, so we're not just welding like on the face here, because that's obviously not going to be very strong. Alright, well that was easy enough. Hold it back together. The only dilemma here is I have no idea what I did with my hoses for this. So I'll have to go get new hoses, but not a big deal. Alright, we got our two hoses. We've got our distilled water, two hoses on, cut them to size. That one's like perfect already. Alrighty, expansion tank back in. Now we just gotta fill it up. We'll fill from the radiator first, just because we can fill faster, and then we'll start filling and bleeding from here. Sounds like the Jetsons mobile. I don't know, we'll see. Maybe this will make a big difference, especially the extra cooling capacity. One way to find out, right? All right, well, our temps seem to have stabilized right at fan on temp, 176. I'd like it to be able to idle down lower than that, but it's not bad. I think we're good. least for now, we'll have to see how it does under drifting driving conditions, but it's holding steady temp, so that's good. All right, well, I already ended this video, and then I just kept working, and then here we are, so I'm just gonna tell you what I did. So basically, clutch problem. If you guys recall, if you've seen the videos, clutch grabs at the top. I mean, like very, very top. Barely press the clutch, it disengages, which means it's probably not engaging fully. It's basically almost like you have your foot on the clutch all the time. So it's been a problem. I thought it was internal to the trans, so I got an adjustable throwout bearing. I put that in, had the same problem. I took the trans back out. I double checked all the measurements, put it back in, same problem. So this time I tackled it a different way. We know the trans side is good. I was like, maybe the rod where the pedal connects and pushes against the master cylinder is too long, and it's, you know, kind of pushing on the master cylinder all the time. So it definitely was. There was tension there, so I took it out, I cut it, I sleeved it, welded it back together, and now it's good. Check it out. We've got play now. Before it was like tight from the very top, whereas now we've got like an inch of play. We're able to adjust the clutch stop and everything's good. So super exciting there. I'll have to drift it to see if it's really fully sorted, but definitely a massive improvement, which I'm really glad to have that done. It's stressful because I'm like, if I keep driving like this, the clutch isn't slipping yet, definitely gonna slip at some point, and you never know when that could happen. So anyway, other thing I did was take the wing off. I just wasn't really a big fan of the wing look, like after going to the bash bar no bumper look, and I like it without a wing. Obviously I need to get a trunk painted that doesn't have holes and scratches in it, but otherwise I'm kind of digging the look. Let me know what you think. But yeah, so anyway, I guess that's gonna wrap us up. I was gonna work on the Subaru, but I need to get some parts in and I'm kind of out of time. And as far as the other projects, I promise we'll be diving into other projects soon, but again, big potential life change, which might have all just fallen apart completely out of my control reasons. I'll get into it once I know more, but I should know more in a couple days, so I'll try to make a video on that, explain everything, update you, and then we'll either be moving and doing projects in that aspect or starting on the Safiro and the turbo truck. So one way or another, we're going to be getting into some stuff other than the same stuff we always work on, but it is nice to have some time to tidy up the main whips, the main aspect of the fleet, because we do have events coming up. So long-winded outro over. I'll see you guys for the next video. Thanks for watching. Thanks for subscribing. Goodbye.